Just stay back and patch us up when we get hit. Document leave the real work to the operators. The words, slick with condescending arrogance, echoed off the concrete walls of the MOUT facility's cavernous staging area. Staff Sergeant Briggs, a man whose muscles seemed to have muscles and whose voice was a permanent state of broadcast, smirked at his own pronouncement. The members of his elite Marine Recon Fire Team, hardened men accustomed to following his lead, offered a few chuckles of complicity. They looked at Sergeant Anya Sharma, their attached combat medic for the exercise, and saw exactly what Briggs saw. A small, quiet woman whose uniform seemed a size too big, her focus entirely consumed by the methodical organization of her medical pack. She wasn't one of them. She was support, a necessary but ultimately peripheral piece of the great, violent machine they commanded. The silence that followed the laughter was heavy with their shared assumptions. But Master Chief Thorne, observing from the shadowy catwalk above, saw something else. He saw the practiced economy of her movements. He saw the way her eyes, calm and dark, never stopped scanning, cataloging every face, every piece of gear, every exit. He saw a stillness that was not passivity, but a profound and patient reservoir of control. Briggs saw a medic. Thorne saw a predator at rest. If you believe that true competence needs no announcement, type silence below. Sergeant Sharma offered no retort. There was no flash of anger in her eyes, no tightening of her jaw. Her response to the public dismissal was a quiet, almost deafening lack of reaction. She simply finished securing a pressure dressing in its pouch, her hands moving with the steady, unhurried grace of a surgeon. She looked up at Briggs, her gaze level and unreadable, and gave a single, clipped response. Understood, Staff Sergeant, that was all. 2 words. They carried no sarcasm, no resentment, only the flat, professional acknowledgement of a directive. For Briggs, this confirmed his assessment. She was passive, compliant, exactly what a support role should be. He clapped his hands together, basking in his perceived authority. All right, let's move out. Remember the plan, people. Fast and lethal. As the fire team filed past her toward the entrance of the simulated city block, their movements loud and aggressive. Sharma slung her pack over her shoulders. The weight, which should have been cumbersome on her frame, settled as if it were a part of her. She picked up her standard M4 carbine, holding it not with the casual familiarity of a rear-echelon soldier, but with an intrinsic, bone-deep understanding of the tool. Her silence was a canvas, and onto it, every man in that room had painted their own prejudice. They had mistaken her calm for weakness, her professionalism for subservience. It was an error in judgment that the unforgiving architecture of the coming trial was about to correct with brutal finality. The exercise began as expected. Briggs's team moved with practiced aggression, breaching doors and clearing rooms with a cacophony of shouted commands and simulated gunfire. Sharma followed in their wake, maintaining a textbook tactical distance, her role precisely what Briggs had demanded, a shadow, present but not participating. Then it happened. A piercing electronic screech filled their earpieces, followed by a sudden, total communications blackout. The lights in the facility flickered once, twice, then switched to a dim, emergency red. A synthesized voice, devoid of emotion, echoed from hidden speakers. Scenario override. Communications failure. All external support offline. Exercise parameters updated. Survive, the scripted training mission was over. This was now a pure test of instinct and adaptability. Almost immediately, simulated machine gun fire erupted from a darkened 2-story building ahead, its position perfectly chosen to dominate the street. 2 of Briggs's men went down, the sensors on their vests flashing red. The team was pinned, their aggressive momentum shattered and replaced by confusion. Briggs, caught in the open, dove for cover, his face a mask of shock. The plan was gone. His loud confidence evaporated into the sudden, terrifying silence between bursts of fire. In that silence, while the operators hugged their cover, Sharma began to move. Her movements were nothing like the cautious trailing she had done before. It was a transformation so absolute it was jarring. She didn't run, she flowed. Staying low, she moved from one piece of cover to the next with a liquid efficiency that seemed to defy the rigid angles of the urban battlefield. The other men were focused on the source of the fire, their training dictating a frontal response. Sharma's gaze was elsewhere. She was reading the geometry of the fight, the subtle interplay of shadow and exposure. She ignored the primary threat and instead slipped into a narrow alleyway they had all dismissed as a dead end. Briggs, peering from behind a concrete barrier, saw her disappear and grunted in frustration, assuming she was running to hide. But she wasn't hiding. She was hunting. The narrator's voice would later describe it as the moment the sheepdog revealed itself to be a wolf. Inside the alley, she moved with practiced silence. She holstered her carbine and drew the sidearm from her thigh rig, a non-standard, heavily modified Glock. At the end of the alley was a maintenance ladder, leading to the roof of an adjacent building. It was a route that wasn't on the schematic, an element of chaos the designers had included to reward those who looked beyond the obvious path. And Anya Sharma always looked beyond the obvious path. The silence from the rest of the team was one of fear and confusion. The silence from Sharma was one of absolute focus. On the rooftop, she moved with the wind. She crawled on her belly to the ledge overlooking the street, her profile impossibly low. Below, Briggs's team was still pinned, exchanging ineffective fire with the automated turrets in the building. From her new vantage point, Sharma could see the entire tactical problem laid bare. She could see the two machine gun nests, and more importantly, she could see the single, rooftop control panel that powered them. It was 100 meters away, a small, 6-inch square target partially obscured by an air conditioning unit. A shot no one would even consider. She unslung her M4, but paused. The standard issue optic wasn't precise enough. Instead, she retrieved the rifle of one of the downed teammates, a designated marksman rifle with a high-powered scope. She didn't ask. She didn't hesitate. She simply took the tool the mission required. She settled the stock into her shoulder, her body a single, solid unit with the weapon. Her breathing slowed until it was almost imperceptible. One breath in, a long, slow breath out. The world narrowed to the circle of the scope. The wind, the distance, the angle, all were variables in an equation she had solved 1,000 times before. Then, a single, clean crack echoed through the street, utterly distinct from the chaotic chatter of automatic fire. It was followed by a deafening silence. Down below, the automated guns swiveled, sparked, and died. The oppressive red lights on the enemy building went dark. The threat was gone, neutralized. Briggs and his remaining men slowly rose from their cover, their faces a mixture of confusion and disbelief. They looked at the silent building, then scanned the street, searching for the source of their salvation. Cease fire. Cease fire. All targets neutralized. End of exercise, the synthesized voice announced, the main lights humming back to full power. The sudden brightness was jarring. Briggs looked up and finally saw her, a lone figure beginning her descent from the rooftop, the marksman rifle slung casually over her shoulder. The impossible shot. The perfect flank. The tactical solution that had been invisible to his entire team of seasoned operators had been executed flawlessly by the one person he had dismissed as irrelevant. He was speechless. His arrogance, so loud and impenetrable just minutes before, had been dismantled by a single, perfectly placed round. As Sharma landed silently on the ground, Master Chief Thorne's heavy boots echoed from the catwalk stairs. He didn't look at Briggs. His eyes, filled with a deep, knowing respect, were locked on the quiet medic who had just rewritten the rules of the entire exercise. His presence promised a reckoning, not of failure, but of ignorance. Thorne walked onto the training floor, the sound of his footsteps the only noise in the stunned arena. He strode past the bewildered recon Marines, his gaze fixed on Sergeant Sharma, who was methodically clearing the marksman rifle before returning it. He stopped directly in front of her. He didn't speak at first, simply observing the calm efficiency of her actions. There was no trace of triumph on her face, no, "I told you so" in her posture. There was only the quiet professionalism of a job completed. "Sergeant." Thorne's voice was a low gravel, a sound that commanded authority without needing to be raised. "I need your full designation and unit of assignment." For the record, Briggs and his men watched, the full weight of their misjudgment beginning to settle in. They expected to hear a medical support battalion, a hospital unit. Sharma looked at the Master Chief and answered in her typical, clipped cadence. "Sergeant Anya Sharma. Operational Detachment Alpha 331. 3rd Special Forces Group, The words hung in the air, dense with meaning that the recon Marines struggled to process. ODA. Special Forces. Green Beret. Briggs's mind reeled. The medic he had told to stay back and patch people up was not just a medic. She was an 18 Delta, a Special Forces medical sergeant, one of the most rigorously trained and versatile soldiers in the entire U.S. military. They were operators, first and foremost. Thorne nodded slowly, as if he had expected the answer. He held out his hand, not for a handshake, but for the tablet his aide passed to him. With a few taps, he pulled up her official file, turning the screen so Briggs could see it. The page was a litany of elite qualifications that read like a fantasy. Staff Sergeant Briggs, Thorne said, his voice now laced with cold iron. I advise you to read this. Read it carefully. Briggs stared at the screen, his face paling. Primary MOS. 18D, Special Forces Medical Sergeant. Secondary and tertiary qualifications. Special Forces Weapons Sergeant, Special Forces Intelligence Sergeant. Sniper School, Honor Graduate. Halo Qualified. 7 combat deployments to classified locations. The awards section was a river of valor. Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars for Valor, 2 Purple Hearts. Mission classification, Tier 1 asset. She wasn't just a Green Beret. She was among the best of them, a ghost who walked in the highest echelons of special operations. Thorne lowered the tablet. Your assumption, he continued, his eyes boring into Briggs, was that competence is loud. You assumed a warrior looks a certain way. You assumed a medic was just a medic. Sergeant Sharma just demonstrated that your assumptions are a tactical liability. She didn't just outperform you. She saved your entire team from a catastrophic mission failure by demonstrating a level of situational awareness you and your men completely lacked. Respect is not given. It is earned, and you will give it. The story of what happened in MOUT Facility 7 spread through the base like a shockwave. It started in the barracks of the Recon Marines, a humbled and quiet retelling by Briggs himself. It moved to the Chow Hall, then to the instructor billets at the training ranges, and finally, it became a kind of institutional legend. The narrative shifted with each telling, but the core elements remained immutable. The arrogant squad leader, the quiet medic, the impossible shot, and the stunning reveal. They started calling the specific training scenario Sharma's Run. New teams being briefed on the course were told the story not as a piece of gossip, but as a formal lesson in humility and professionalism. The legend wasn't just about her skill. It was about the crushing defeat of prejudice. It was a powerful, living reminder that the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the one making the most noise. Her quiet competence had become a roar that echoed across the entire installation. It forced a cultural reset, compelling hardened warriors to look past the patches on a uniform and instead seek the measure of the individual wearing it. Sharma herself, of course, took no part in the myth-making. When people saw her on base, they would often stare, whispering her name. She never acknowledged it, her focus always on the task at hand, her demeanor as unassuming as it had been that first day. Briggs underwent the most profound transformation. The public humiliation could have broken a lesser man, made him bitter and resentful. Instead, it remade him. A week after the incident, he found Sergeant Sharma at the marksmanship range where she was quietly practicing. He approached not with his usual swagger, but with a stiff, formal bearing. He stood before her and delivered a crisp, sincere apology, his voice low and devoid of its usual bluster. Sergeant, I was unprofessional. I was ignorant. And I was wrong. There's no excuse for my conduct. Sharma simply looked at him and gave a small, accepting nod. Bolstered, Briggs continued. I would be honored if you would agree to train my team. Show us what you saw. Show us how you did what you did. This was the true victory. Not the impossible shot, but this moment, the conversion of an arrogant skeptic into a willing student. She agreed, and her training sessions became as legendary as the initial event. Her instruction was like her personality, quiet, precise, and brutally effective. She didn't lecture, she demonstrated. She didn't shout, she corrected. She taught them to see the battlefield not as a place for aggression, but as a complex geometric problem to be solved with patience and precision. In the briefing room of Facility 7, a new plaque was mounted. It held a single, spent 762 mm casing, the one from her shot, with a simple inscription beneath it, the shot that ended 1,000 assumptions. Years passed. The legend of Sharma's run became codified, an official part of the training doctrine for all special operations candidates passing through the base. It was the first story they were told, a foundational parable about the dangers of ego and the virtue of the quiet professional. Staff Sergeant Briggs, now promoted to gunnery sergeant, became one of the most respected instructors in the recon community, known for his humility and his uncanny ability to identify and nurture raw talent, regardless of its packaging. He began every new training cycle with the same story, the story of his own monumental failure, the day he mistook a lioness for a lamb. He used his own mistake as the ultimate teaching tool, ensuring that a new generation of operators would never repeat it. Sergeant Sharma was long gone, reassigned to another classified corner of the world where her skills were needed. She left behind no statues, no portraits, only a standard of silent excellence that permeated the very culture of the institution. Her legacy wasn't in a single act of marksmanship, but in the countless moments of reflection it inspired. It was in the young Marine who listened to the quietest member of his team, in the squad leader who valued awareness over aggression, in the fundamental understanding that true strength doesn't need to announce its presence. It simply waits for the moment to be demonstrated. The ultimate lesson was not about a single soldier, but about a universal truth. It was a testament to the idea that competence is a quiet thing, a force that builds in the silent hours of practice, in the relentless pursuit of mastery. It does not need validation from the crowd. Its validation comes from the successful completion of the mission when all else fails. Arrogance is a brittle shield, loud and showy, but it shatters at the first real impact with undeniable skill. Humility, on the other hand, is the flexible armor of the true professional, allowing them to observe, to adapt, and to act with a clarity that ego can never achieve. Anya Sharma's story became a symbol of this philosophy. It taught that respect is a currency earned not through words, but through deeds. It taught that the most profound strength is often found in the deepest silence. Her legacy was not a memory of a past event. It was a living, breathing principle carried forward in the actions of every soldier who heard her story and chose to listen more than they spoke, to observe more than they postured, and to prove their worth not with their voice, but with their impact on the world. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over ignorant arrogance and where silent precision defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.